policy or platform in that area?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. I get asked about a senior strategy on a lot of doorsteps, actually. Seniors often bring that up.
Yeah, about 36% of the doors you're going to. Yeah.
It can feel like more than that, actually.
Yes.
We want to implement a senior strategy. We know that we have issues with elder abuse. We know that we need to battle dementia. And we know that our seniors are too often neglected or suffering from loneliness and a lack of community. And we know that the voices that we need to bring to the table to address these issues are seniors themselves, because
Yes.
who better to solve the problem than the people experiencing them? And so we would definitely create a senior strategy, because this is incredibly important. Everyone deserves to have a dignified, joyful retirement.
I totally agree with you, being a senior. So the second priority is retirement income security. And again, when we spoke to discuss this, I gave you an example.
Yeah.
And the example was a friend of mine who had worked for the Federal Public Service for 35 years. They worked in a position called a CR3 position. The salary she made wasn't fantastic, but it was sufficient for her to be able to pay her rent, pay her bills, you know, provide for herself a little bit to meet her daily needs. So when she retired, we had a coffee probably a year or so into her retirement, and she found that she had a pension from her federal job. She had her CPP, she had her OAS, she actually qualified for the GIS as well. And even with that, she wasn't able to afford really good food. So there was no fresh produce or no special things. She was eating things that certainly weren't the healthiest for her. So it scared me when she told me, because you know I'd worked for the federal government too, and I worked in a different position, but still it was like, okay, how much money does that actually translate? So her pension was far from gold-plated, but it meant that her income security was a huge issue for her. So if you can imagine being a senior in and leaving a workplace, having a workplace pension, and then still not being able to buy the food that you need. So I'd really like to know, does your party platform put forth a possible resolution for this?
Yes, it does. This reminds me of a doorstep that I was on yesterday, actually. I talked to a woman who's in her retirement years, and she told me that despite having worked for 35 years, working very hard, I believe it probably was also a government job, she contributed so much to Canada, she paid her taxes, she raised her kids, and now she's barely making ends meet. The only reason that she has a roof over her head or she's able to eat food at all is because her kids pitch in every now and again. And we had this conversation about how absolutely discouraging that was, and demeaning that she would have contributed to our society in such a meaningful way for so long, only to be essentially discarded. And that makes me very angry. It just makes me very angry. And so some of the things that we would do is we want to make sure that we're reviewing GIS and OAS. We know that those things need to be increased. We need to review seniors' pensions, because pensions have not kept up with the cost of living, and that is absolutely unacceptable. And in all things, I believe that we need to review so that everything is the most respectful of people and allowing them to live dignified lives, instead of feeling like they have to beg after having contributed so much for so long.
Yes, thank you. So the third priority is pharmacare, and I'm sure you haven't heard that word at all.
Not really, no.
So would you tell us a little bit about what your party's proposing to do? I've certainly heard lots about what it is, but I think our listeners and viewers would probably like to hear about that too.
Yeah, well, we are excited to expand on Tommy Douglas's dream, where instead of just having the current Medicare system that we have, we want to create a universal head-to-toe healthcare system where everyone has access to the pharmacare that they need. So that would mean access to your prescription medication, access to dental care, vision, hearing care, access to mental health supports. As someone who works in post-secondary, I've seen firsthand the mental health care crisis that so many of our students are experiencing, and I know that also so many of our seniors are experiencing mental health care crises as well. And so much of this revolves around the fact that none of us can pay to keep ourselves alive. We're all desperate.
Yes.
I know seniors who are cutting their pills in half or skipping pills to try and make their prescriptions last longer. I know students doing the same thing. Actually, yesterday I knocked on the door of a house, and then a realtor opened the door, and I realized the house was vacant. But I had a really awesome conversation with him, and despite the fact that he's a fairly successful realtor, he told me because he doesn't have benefits as a realtor, he needs to take medication, but instead of taking the 3 pills a day that he's prescribed, he takes 1 to make it stretch as long as possible. And I had a little heart palpitation when he told me that, because that is so terrifying. People shouldn't be doing that. We need to be following doctors' orders in terms of our medication. And we had this conversation, and he asked me, well, how would we pay for it? And I pointed out to him that by stretching his medication out like that, he was putting himself at risk. So were he to need to call EMS, that would be costly for our medical system. A hospital stay would be costly. Doctors, nurses, wages. These are all things that we can make savings on if people have access to the medication they need. They'll be healthier, they'll be more productive members of society. And I just think of all the anxiety that we could relieve if people just had access to the medication they needed. So our goal is that you are able to go into your pharmacy and pay for your prescriptions, pick them up with your healthcare card. Don't pull out your debit card, don't pull out your credit card. Don't panic about how far you have to make this medication stretch. You take it as prescribed because you have access to it.
Well, I have to say, in terms of the federal retirees, that is such a major piece in terms of our priorities. And I know I have hearing aids, and I had a pair of hearing aids that worked, but not very well, and it affected the quality of my life. I'm turning the TV up, and everybody in the house is saying, please turn it down. But when I got a new pair of hearing aids, it was like, okay, $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 to get a pair that's really effective. So you can have that quality of life. And I know that's not life-threatening, but it is life impacting. If you can't hear and you're in a life where you can't watch TV, you can't listen to the radio, you can't enjoy music, there's so many things.
Well, what's interesting to me is that so often when we have this pharmacare conversation, it becomes so politicized, and you'll hear some people say that most Canadians are covered by work benefits, so why do they need pharmacare? And what's interesting, as contrast to that, is before both me and my partner had benefits through our work, when only I was working, only I had benefits, and they're fantastic benefits. I just have a 20% copay, but we were still paying $200 to $300 a month for our prescription medication because of that copay. So if it's inaccessible to people who have benefits, how much harder is it for people who don't? It's ridiculous.
I could probably go on for a while on that one, but I'm not going to. So the fourth priority for the federal retirees was our veterans. And I said I believe that all of these priorities affect every senior. Everybody who's a vet is going to be a senior. And they put their life on the line for us. So personally, I feel I have an obligation to say thank you and make sure that they are looked after. So again, does this topic, well, if you could expand on the topic in terms of the party platform.
Well, we know that veterans are not getting access to the type of care or the timely care that they need. We are seeing so many veterans that are suffering, needlessly suffering, because the access to healthcare or help of any kind, mental health supports through Veterans Affairs is sad. It's lacking, and so we're losing people. We're actually losing people to suicide because this is so tragic. And And it's very frustrating because it doesn't need to be this way. It should
No.
not be this way.
No.
So one of the goals that we have is that we would have one caseworker for every 25 veterans,
Mhm.
so that everyone is accessing the care that they need, that they're not just on a pile of paper on someone's desk that will eventually be gotten to. We know that we need to make reviews. We know that we need to make it easier for veterans to access caregiver supports. We need to make it easier for them to access education. We need to make sure that their pensions are sustaining them. This is
Mhm.
something that definitely needs to be bolstered for them, because you're right. They have sacrificed so much for us.
Yes.
They've given up the best years of their lives. Oftentimes they end up with injuries that they will carry until they're
Yeah.
gone. And we repay them by pushing them to the side and saying, figure it out yourself. And that's unacceptable.
Totally unacceptable. In fact, when it would have been probably 2010, the government of the day, federally, started closing those Veterans Affairs
Yeah.
office. And so it meant that veterans were having to drive 200, 300 kilometers
Yeah.
to get to a veteran's office.
Yeah.
And it means they've got to get somebody else to take them.
Mhm.
It's going to be a long drive, and all kinds of problems associated with it. And certainly, as a group, we fought against those closures. Unfortunately, we weren't successful, and our
Yeah.
veterans have paid for that.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to hear
Mhm.
that you do have a strong piece available for to cover our veterans.
Yeah, well, my core passion is that everyone has access to the care that they need, that there aren't barriers in place for people to
Mhm.
access that. And it's interesting, if you look at the Canada Healthcare Act and the obligations that Canada has under the Healthcare Act, is that there will be no undue barriers to accessing necessary care. And I feel like so often, so many people in our society, veterans, seniors, young people, are experiencing these barriers, and we need to do something about that.
Those barriers need to come down. You're listening to Maria's Musings on www.jessfm.ca, and we are here with our special guest, Shandy Blaken, the NDP candidate for the Lethbridge riding in this federal election. So the next issue, which is also a big one,
Mm-hmm.
reconciliation and
Yeah.
justice.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving this one open
Okay.
for you to just tell us
Yeah.
kind of where you're coming from on
Mhm.
this issue.
Yeah, well, I'm really proud of our reconciliation and justice piece and the platform, because it isn't about us. It's about honoring the treaties and commitments that we have made, nation to nation. We all have obligations under these treaties, and so far those obligations have not been met. In fact, I would say the opposite is true. You look at the most recent Human Rights Tribunal ruling, and the fact that money needed to be paid out for serious damages caused, damages that money will never fix, but
Yes.
there has to be some sort of restitution, and the current government is fighting that in court, and they're
Mhm.
saying that they just want to nitpick and fix some things out, but in reality it's just another slap in the face when we have not ever had a true nation-to-nation relationship. Before we can do anything for reconciliation, we have to acknowledge the fact that we have colonized this land, we have been the perpetrators of genocide, and we need to do real meaningful action
Mhm.
to start repairing these relationships, and that obligation is on Canada, because we haven't upheld our part of the treaties. So some of our goals are to make sure that every person on a reservation has access to clean, safe drinking water by
Yes.
2021.
Yes.
We need to make sure that Indigenous communities are leading the way in climate crisis action, because we know that they are our land and water protectors. They have knowledge, and we need to really listen to them and partner with them in this, instead of only listening to them when we feel like it's convenient for
Yes.
us and then pushing them aside the rest of the time. We need to make sure that everyone has access to the education they need, whether that's primary or post-secondary education. Really just working in partnership, seeing what they need, giving them what they need, and then backing off, because it's not up to us to say what
That's
Indigenous
right.
communities need. It's their lives.
Yes, and we're on their land.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said one thing when you were talking about, you talked about restitution and
Mhm.
nitpicking about restitution.
Mhm.
So you know I worked in corrections for
Yeah.
32 and a half years. And in fact, offenders that committed offenses
Mhm.
that were money related or different
Mhm.
things were required to pay
Mhm.
restitution.
Yeah.
They're not getting out
No.
without that on their
Yeah.
file.
Mhm.
So if we're going to make offenders in justice system
Yeah.
pay restitution, why are we as Canadians
Mhm.
that owe
Yeah.
all kinds of things
Mhm.
to our Indigenous people, why is there any question about doing that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not a question of handouts. These aren't handouts. This is money. This is respect.
Yeah.
This is a seat at the table that has been required by the treaties from the beginning.
Yes.
And yet we have always found a way to work around that and never do it. And I say that ends now.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about healthcare.
Okay.
And does your party couple this with the pharmacare plan?
Yes, so our pharmacare, we're calling it head to toe. So that
Yes.
means that you have access to your prescription medication. That includes because we know that healthy mouths are healthy bodies. We're seeing so much research now that when your mouth is unhealthy, so is the rest of your body. And so it's ridiculous that people are putting off seeing a dentist, which is then leading to complications where they end up in the ER.
Yes.
Yes, when they should just be seeing a dentist, but the reality is that very few people can afford it, even with a copay, with benefits at a job.
Yes.
Prices when you go to the dentist are so high that they're unattainable for people. There are parents who are making the choice not to take their kids who have cavities to the dentist knowing their child is in pain and in danger because they can't afford it. It's like, do I pay the rent and make sure that my child has a home and food to eat, or do I go to the dentist? And these are not choices that anyone should be making. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So our goal is that everyone is able to go to the dentist. It would be free as long as your income was under $70,000 a year. Between $70,000 and $90,000 a year, there would be a sliding scale.
Yes.
And then we know that the Parliamentary Budget Office has reviewed our pharmacare plan. Our pharmacare plan has been applauded by many healthcare organizations, nurses federations.
Yes.
And the Parliamentary Budget Office says that with the way that we plan to buy prescriptions as a block instead of province by province, but with the entire country, we would actually be able to save $4.2 billion that we could then put back into the healthcare system, because we know that we need to be able to pay our nurses more. We know that we need to be able to build more hospitals. We need to have better updated equipment. These are all things that we need money for. So yeah, it does cover healthcare.
Thank you. Thank you. Now some questions about you and about your campaign. So I know that you've been door knocking for a long time.
Yep.
Before this election was called. But I know personally because, in fact, you were out canvassing for me.
I was.
And we did a lot of doors.
We did.
We did a lot of doors. So how about if you tell our audience about how you feel about canvassing, because you have lots of experience now.
Yeah, I've got to say, and this surprises people because I know it can be a little bit intimidating to knock on a stranger's door, but canvassing is my favorite part about running this campaign. I didn't know if it would feel different knocking as the candidate, and I got to tell you it does. It's so much more fun.
Yes.
Because when someone asks me a question, I don't have to say, well, I think that they would feel this way, or let me take your phone number down. I get to have a real conversation with them. And I know that there is sometimes a lack of feeling of community because we're all attached to our devices, and it can sometimes feel like we're battling things out online and not really having conversations face to face.
Yes.
And I have to say that, I mean, there are certainly the people that have told me that they're not going to vote for me, but we've still been able to have
A
a conversation and connect and laugh over kids' antics and pet cute dogs or be jumped on by dogs.
Yeah.
I was covered in dog hair yesterday, head to toe.
Okay, I shouldn't be rubbing my pants
I'm
against you.
clean
'cause-
now.
Yeah, okay. Yes, but my dog was on me today. Yeah.
So I just think it's such a valuable thing that we continue to do, because there's this human connection component that is the part that makes this entire process seem so meaningful and worthwhile to me, because the reason that I'm running is our community. It's the people in our community that have inspired me, that have driven me on, the people that I love. And so being able to talk to people one-on-one has been a really life-giving, affirming experience for me. And I'm not going to necessarily be sad that I'm not walking 8 kilometers a day, because my feet are a little sore at the end of the day sometimes. But it's been so fantastic just to connect with people like that on a daily basis.
Yes, and I can totally relate to that. So I want to ask kind of an inside question. So when I was canvassing, my campaign manager often had somebody come and grab me because I was spending too much time at a door. So tell me, did that happen to you?
Well, I have mostly been knocking with volunteers, and there are sometimes conversations where even I know that they're running a little bit long, and so you try to start hedging and being like, well, this has been a great conversation, I've got to go. But there was one day where a gentleman had made some fantastic sculptures in his backyard, and he wanted to show them to me, and I was like, okay, let's go look. And so I was actually canvassing with my partner, and my partner kept looking at me and being like, we've got to go. We've got to go, Shandy. There's a forum in 20 minutes. And I'm like, but this is so interesting.
And I know, because the same thing happened to me, and I love talking to my constituents, so I did not want to give that up at all. And you're right. And then maybe our personalities are very similar, but definitely canvassing was my favorite part of the campaign.
Definitely.
Okay, so now I want to kind of go to another vein. As I said earlier, there's been some polarization that's gone on across the country. So do you have any negative things that have happened to you or your team while you've been out canvassing? Or on the phone, or on the email or internet?
I am really, really lucky and really joyful with the fact that I can say no, nothing has happened. I mean, you always have some people who are a little bit upset that you're knocking their door. Maybe they're making dinner and you're interrupting, or they were taking a nap and you woke them up. And there are definitely some heated political opinions, but I don't know if it's just that I have a very young face or what, but a couple of days ago, like this, and this is so exemplary of like what my entire door knocking experience has been like, but an elderly gentleman told me like, I'm sorry, I can't vote for you, but have a good day, sweetie. And that is
okay.
that is what it's been like. But I made a decision from the beginning that this is going to be a positive experience for me, no matter what happened. And so I feel like that has had a little bit of an impact on how the campaign has gone, because I knew from the start that not everyone was going to agree with me. Some people might even vehemently disagree with me or have strong negative feelings towards me. And because I knew that was a possibility, I just accepted that. And I said, no matter what happens, I'm going to take something positive out of this.
Yes.
I'm going to make my mark, I'm going to have my say, and I'm going to help build my community up stronger than I found it. And I'm proud to say that I feel like I've done that.
Well, I certainly feel like you have. And I will tell you that when you win tomorrow and you're in an office,
I'm crossing my fingers under the table.
Okay, so the people that you've had those conversations with, you will have those conversations in your office because you have opened yourself up to your constituents, and I'm really proud of you that you did that.
Thank you so much. That means so much coming from you.
Okay, so is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners or viewers? Like thank them, tell them a little bit more about you, anything that you want to add. This is the time for you to talk.
Well, I think the thing that has kept coming up in my mind as we approach the end of this process, and I've been writing a thank you speech for my volunteers, and I have these moments where I'm struggling to find the words, which is funny because I'm quite a wordy person. And I just keep stumbling over this wall of gratitude. I'm just so grateful for this experience. I'm grateful for our communities. I'm grateful for the leaders that have led the way. People like you and Shannon and Rachel and Nikki Ashton in Manitoba, all these strong women with strong voices who have paved the way for me and the others running in this election as well. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to have all of these conversations with our community, to hear voices that I may even disagree with, but to have those conversations face to face, I'm just really, really thankful. And it's made me, I was already proud, but it's made me so much more proud to live in this place. It's made me so much more grateful and appreciative of this fantastic city that we live in. And I'm so excited for the opportunity to bring these diverse voices that have so much to give Canada to Ottawa. And I know that we can get afraid, or we can get bogged down and start wondering, is our vote going to matter? Do I need to vote for someone that I don't necessarily resonate with because I'm afraid that my voice won't make its mark? And I want to tell people that it's okay to vote for something that you believe in. It's okay to vote for a hopeful, better future. Don't be waylaid by fearful rhetoric that tells you that you need to vote one way or another to keep the doomsday from coming. It's okay to vote with your heart, because once you cast that vote, I want you to feel confident in how you cast your vote. And I would really appreciate and be so humbled and honored to get people's votes tomorrow. And if they in any way need help finding out where their voting station is, or they need a ride to the polls, they can come into my office. I'm right beside the Penny Coffee House downtown. We would love to help you.
Do you want to give your phone number for the campaign office so people could call the campaign office if they needed to?
I don't quite have that memorized.
Okay. You can look it up online. I do know
Yes.
that it's there.
It is, yeah.
But Shandy, first of all, it's been fabulous for you to
Thank
come on
you.
and to talk about the campaign.
Yeah.
I have to say that there are several candidates that are running
Mhm.
that are good candidates. But I won't say who I voted for.
I
But
have no idea.
yeah, but I did get out and I voted early because I wanted to make sure I make
Mhm.
my mark. And since I was old enough to vote, I've only missed one election in Canada, and that's because I was living in the US at the time. But
Wow.
I voted in every other election, both
Wow.
federal and provincial.
Yeah.
So you've been here this evening listening and viewing Maria's Musings on www.jessfm.ca with our very special guest, Shandy Blaken, the NDP candidate in the Lethbridge riding in this federal election. Thank you so much for coming, Shandy.
Thank
Really
you so
appreciate
much
it.
for having me, Maria.
And I hope our listeners have
Yeah.
really heard something that will
Mhm.
resonate with them in
Yeah.
terms of the party platform.
Yeah.
So thank you very much again.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we have the number. Just hang on a minute. And
Okay, so
Okay.
you can call my office tomorrow at 403-942-1438. I know that we're going to have a ton of volunteers on the phone to take your call if you need a ride. If you don't know exactly where you need to go to vote, we are there to help you.
thanks very much, Shandy.
You're welcome.
And if you haven't voted already,
Vote.
get out and vote. It is
Yeah.
a privilege. It is a
Mhm.
right of yours to do it.
Yeah.
Many people in this world can't. Make sure you use your privilege.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.